The next hour and a half, we're going to hear from three really inspirational women. So let me introduce the first of our speakers, all the way from Australia. Her name is Brideson. And even though most consumer brand decisions are made by women, agencies are all too often run mainly by men. And this is true, isn't it, of creative agencies. I'm delighted to welcome Beck, who runs her own agency. And she's really a class-leading expert in how women really engage with marketing and communication. She's also an extremely passionate advocate for the role of women as agency leaders. So please give a nice warm welcome to Beck Brideson.
Thank you. So first thing, bit of housekeeping. Julian did say that he wants everyone to get out there on social media. So there's the Twitter handles, and please do tweet away, Snapchat away, whatever. Take photographs. My family are doubting that I'm actually here and doing this, so it'll help provide proof for me. So, today I'm going to talk to you about blind spots. When I was 23 years old, working in a creative department, my creative director wrestled me to the ground. So I eventually gave up fighting. He was a lot bigger a man than I. And in front of my 19 colleagues, he got out a black Pantone marker. Remember, in those days they had the chisel tip and the fine tip at the end. And he drew a penis on my forehead. So I know what it is to be an outsider, and perhaps as independent agency owners, you also feel like an outsider. When I started my own agency in 2004, because I'd quite frankly had enough of working in those toxic environments, I certainly felt like an outsider often. But I started an agency with a competitive edge, and it was to understand how powerful women are as consumers. Because the reality is, man size is the standard size. So even the pitch of the seat of the cockpit has been modelled on a male figure. A seatbelt was designed to keep men safe. On the way up to lunch, you might have noticed there are a lot of oil paintings of men. When I was at school learning about art, I had no idea that there were female artists. All of our business books, the way we've learned marketing, it's really been largely through a traditional and male lens. And I'm not saying this because I've got a pussy hat on and I haven't burnt my bra before I came here. This is not about me saying that the patriarchy needs to be overthrown. This is just a reality check to say at the point we are in history, we have been developed, we have arrived at this point through that traditional male lens. And as a result, we see figures like this. So only 9% of women feel like marketers and advertisers, businesses and brands get them. 40% don't feel like they identify with the women that we put in our ads. And the crappiest figure of all, Unilever did this research. They only feel that 2% of women are portrayed as intelligent. So these are pretty damning figures. How are brands getting it wrong? How does business get it wrong? Well, there's no emotional hook. The heart piece is missing in a lot of the work that we produce. And women want relationships. But just like, imagine a brand going on a date with a woman, if all that brand does is talk about themselves for the entire date, the woman's not that interested. What she wants is two-way conversation, some empathy, getting on the same side of the table as her and saying, what do you need? How can I help? How will this relationship enrich both of our lives? The average mother, working mother, has 17 minutes of me time per day. and women who have children spend approximately 5 hours more every day looking after children. So women really need help to try to solve that time crisis that they deal with on a daily basis. And not enough brands and not enough business understand this daily challenge. It takes a village to raise a child, and women love community, and marketing has been built through a masculine assumption of hierarchy, where one brand must be better than the other, where you must conquer. You must prove yourself through some Darwinian impulse. Males must prove that they are better than the other. But that's not the relationship that women look for. Women want a tide to raise all boats. The classic pink it and shrink it. Well, Nike learned the hard way. Initially, when they started selling to women, they just took the male shoe and they made it pink and they made it small. And then when competitors came into the market like Lululemon and showed how activewear could be styled and fashioned, it forced Nike to go back and look at it and say, what are they doing wrong? And they realised they were pinking and shrinking, so they actually got real females and they took the foot mould of a woman's foot and created a shoe that suited women. And therefore, if you don't get the business, if you don't solve the problem, you end up with clumsy sales and marketing. And that's what I found. Having a business that was going to market to women, it was a bit like putting lipstick on a pig. If we weren't solving the problem that existed with the client, it didn't matter how effective the ad was, we still needed to solve the problem of the brand and the business. This is the kind of stuff that we get wrong, and it's little wonder that American Apparel is no longer around. And BIC have gone from one disaster to the next. Just look at that headline. Look like a girl, act like a lady, think like a man, work like a boss. And these were the guys who did the pink pen, thinking that that would sell more pens to women. This one that caused a lot of controversy at Cannes, and rightly so. In fact, this maybe led to the glass lions. And then this, when women are responsible for influencing the purchase of 80% of new cars. It's kind of crazy. So, this is what it feels like to be a female, not just in the advertising business, but when you're a female consumer. Things are really good when you get it right. This is from the De Beers campaign about a decade ago. They found the insight that women were no longer going to wait for a male to put the diamond ring on her finger. They said the left hand says we and the right hand says me, and sales increased 15% when they targeted women. And over the last decade, they have found that women's purchasing of diamonds has increased by 50% because they have started a dialogue that is relevant with women. Bridget Jones created an amazing phenomena around shapewear. Why? Because there is a need for women to feel like they can wear a dress and suck their guts and their butts in. And here we see agent provocateur are looking for someone to buy them. Who's reading the needs of women more accurately right now? This fantastic campaign that won at Cannes last year, Ariel. Have we all seen it? Yep. Yes, women have seen it. Yeah. So it portrays a woman coming home from work doing the second shift. She comes home, she's multitasking, she's taking a business call, she's cooking dinner, she's fetching her husband tea, she's helping her dad pack for his return trip, she's doing her son's homework, she's doing the washing. And the father observes this and invites the viewer by saying, why is it a woman's job to do this? So this has done not only a great job for women, but a great job for men. And when you get it right with women, you find more often than not, you'll get it right for men as well. And over in Australia, this lady up here, she's the wife of a carrot farmer. And they increased the value of misshapen carrots that you could not sell in supermarkets by 900% by putting a female lens onto this problem, that to fill the lunchbox of kids every morning with healthy snacks is an arduous task. That peeling and cutting and dicing and slicing carrots adds time to that equation in the morning. So they had this genius idea, why don't we pre-package them? And look at the profitability from taking that traditional male lens and looking at it through fresh female perspective. So this is what we need. It's a problem that everyone can fix. It's moving from that traditional lens and learning how to see through a female lens. This poster, if you've seen X-Men, probably makes sense, but I haven't. And my kids haven't. And what do they see here? Let's take a look. It's a big, strong man choking a woman with the headline, "Only the strong will survive." We live in a time where 1 in 3 women suffer from domestic violence, 1 in 3 girls are sexually abused. In Brazil, every 15 seconds, a woman is raped. So socially and morally, we have an obligation to make sure that the kinds of messages that we push out to our society make sense, are responsible, do the right thing, break old stereotypes. This particular example is from Australia, and this one's all over the headlines in the advertising industry. It's going to win Cannes Awards, the big gong it's picked for. It's from the Transport Accident Commission, and it's meant to show us what you would need to look like to survive a crash in the future. And I want to point out this word here. It says person, the only person designed to survive on our roads. I have 2 little girls, and they said to me, "Mum, what would we need to look like to survive on the roads?" Now, this person has stubble. This person is wearing men's shorts, and this person's name is Graham. So what do I tell my girls? What message are we giving women if we say that their lives are not quite as important? So let's take a quick look at numbers, right? The grey is males, the purple is females. On the left, the overall total shows there's quite a disparity, and there's less than 10% of female CDs. This is a problem in our industry. But the problem isn't just a problem of human resource. I think the problem's bigger. We're making marketing and we're using solutions that belong in a different era. We're using old lumpy tools when we're in a new modern society. We've got updated with VR and digital everything, but we've forgotten about one really basic thing that we need to skill ourselves up with. We need the ability to understand how to actually get in and find out what women are really looking for. We need to finesse our process, and our process is targets, defensive. It is launching strategies and campaigns. It is the language of battle. That's what marketing is. Strategic planning was invented by ex-military. Our business book's about the art of war. I can't tell you a female marketer who's written a book that has made it into the top 10 in the last 10 years. We are seeing marketing through the male lens. And so it's not just an HR problem, because I myself am a recovering misogynist. I had to learn that the only way I could get my work through my creative directors or through my clients was to think like a man. And there's plenty of women who are in the position who are still thinking like men. So have a look at this gender scale. We've got unaware and we've got conscious. And take a look, see where you would fit. Are you not even interested? A lot of the industry are not. They're not thinking about it, they don't care, and therefore they're missing out on a great opportunity to make profit. And then you've got brands like, in the UK, This Girl Can, the Like a Girl campaign, the De Beers, the case studies that I've shared with you, brands who are actually deciding to have conversations with women who are reaping the financial rewards. So where are you and where do you need to get to? A lot of the time, I come into work with business when they are rethinking because they're dissatisfied and they know things need to change. So now I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room, which is segmentation. Philip Kotler existed in a different era when men were men, businessmen, and women were housewives. He was the father of segmentation, but we don't have a mother, and we need one. These are brains, male and female, read an identical passage of text. And you can see the male brain has a lot of activity in each hemisphere from the front of the brain to the back of the brain. And you can see quite clearly that the female brain has a lot of activity going between the left and the right hemisphere. And women actually have 12.5 times the size corpus callosum, which is the part of the brain which helps information pass between left and right hemispheres. So this is just a biological fact that men and women are different. Hormonally, we're really different. Men go through 2 testosterone surges, one at 6 weeks when the fetus becomes a male, and their brains marinate in testosterone, and then again at puberty. Women go through many hormonal changes with pregnancy, with breastfeeding, with puberty, with menopause. So women are more like the weather changing all the time, and men are more constant. That, again, is another biological fact that makes men and women different. So if we have these different responses when we hear a piece of text, of course we have different responses when we see advertising. And here's a trace line that shows that. You can see that the men's attention really fell off. And the reason for that is because the colour pink appeared through the ad. But there are studies that show that even when men and women have played the same ad that is for men, like a Heineken ad during the Super Bowl, that women's brain activity is more engaged than men's. So women are a more engaged consumer, no matter what. Now, this is a very scientific study. This is how men pick shampoo. This is how my husband picks shampoo. I often joke that if I put dog shampoo in the shower, he'd use it. He wouldn't even care. He wouldn't know. But me, I've got a PhD in shampoo. And this is the truth, isn't it? This is how different men and women are when it comes to their involvement with categories and with products. So I'm going to bust open a few myths. And one of those, I think, is a really big hangover from the 80s when anti-discrimination laws came into the workplace. So if you say, well, we're going to do a campaign for men and we're going to do a campaign for women, not only do the clients think, how the hell will my budget stretch? But they think, isn't that discriminating? Aren't we like calling out men and women as different? Yes, you are, because it makes sense. If you do an audit of who is buying the brand, then the money should follow. If 80% of women are buying, then wouldn't you make an ad that 80% of women are going to connect with, rather than try and homogenise and whitewash something that's going to miss both men and women? Another common myth is HR have got this one. And HR might come in and HR might help to change some of the unconscious bias and some of the numbers and some of the pay gap. But until we learn to look with both the male and the female lens, it doesn't matter how many recovering female misogynists come into the business. And another great myth is women, well, we've been selling cornflakes to women for over 100 years. And yes, you have. But don't get caught napping, because women, if I use the analogy of relationships, might be just putting up with you until something better comes along. Women want that loyalty and that marriage and that commitment to your brand when you look after them. The big consultancy firms have been studying women for a couple of decades, and they've got research that's thick and deep and shows the power of the female economy. And we know that these big consultancy companies are coming for the industry. In Australia, they're starting to soak them up. So they're getting wise to the fact that women are a really, really powerful consumer. A lot of people don't believe what I'm saying. A lot of people don't believe that there are icebergs melting and that the earth is heating up. But they say there are 3 big changes to the world, and that is the web, the weather, and women. And so if you don't think that women are changing this industry, then I say what you're doing is denying your clients the opportunity to do better. Just quickly, a review of history. Once, women were just at a stage called survival. When they married their husbands, they became the property of them. Their husbands could claim any land and their children. And then in the 60s, thanks to the invention of the pill, women could control when they were going to start a family. In 2016, Donald Trump changed that, but that's beside the point. Women got control of their fertility, and the Equal Opportunities Act allowed women to go into the workforce, and so women went en masse into the workforce. And then they went home and they were the CEO of their home, so they did the second shift and they are influencing what comes in and out of their home, like the gatekeeper. Yes, their husband may be doing the shopping, but he is buying exactly what she says to buy, to put on the shelf to replace what was there. In the last 3 years, women's income has grown exponentially and will continue to do so, and this is even when women aren't paid as much as men. So imagine when we get that one right. They're worth 28 trillion as a global consumer economy, and the global consumer economy is 35 trillion. So we're talking big bickies. And in just over a decade, women will make 75% of the discretionary spending decisions. So make no mistake, what we're talking about is massive. It is a massive financial growth opportunity. I call it a gold rush. And I don't understand why we are not taking it more seriously. So much so frustrated am I at this. I know it can grow a business. We know from all of the figures that Ernst & Young and Catalyst and all of the companies have done to say when you put more women on boards, the performance of the business does better. Yet we're not doing it in our own agencies, and marketers are not doing it. And there are big gaping blind spots. So I've written this book, which is due for release in September, which is really taking apart how we create the relationship with women that they want. And yes, I've purposely kept my name off the book. I've used my initials because I do not want unconscious bias to get in the way and make people bounce off that. So we've got a couple of other women coming up, and I know that they're going to fill in some more blind spots. but I hope that I can leave you feeling with no doubt that if you have not taken the opportunity with women seriously, this is your wake-up call. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Huge thanks to Beck there. Right, next up, it is the time of the ladies from New York. So Gina Hadley, we are delighted to say, is here. Let me give you a little bit of background to Gina. Gina and her business partner, Jenny Galuzzo, are the founders of Second Shift, which is a recruitment consultancy serving the agency business in US. And really what they aim to do was to encourage and enable them to hire talented and motivated people who were not necessarily able to work the typical New York day, which I'm led to understand starts at 7 and possibly finishes around about midnight with weekends thrown in. Gina's business does not only work with women, but they are obviously a very important focus to her. So Gina, I'm delighted to say, is going to be joined on stage now by Helen Croft. She's the COO and General Counsel for the Mission Agency, also in New York, and it just so happens one of Gina's clients. So please welcome to the stage Gina and Helen.
We're going to sit, if that's okay. Helen actually is not a New Yorker, and she works out of New York and London with Mission. Thank you so much. Thank you, Julian, for inviting me from New York to come and speak about this, my company, The Second Shift. I'm thrilled to tell you about who we are and what we do, and I'm thrilled to be here with Helen Croft, the COO of Mission Worldwide. I'm just going to start you off with this. Educated women, 51% of college graduates, are the first to opt out of the workforce at the mean age of 31 years old, the same age that most people's career trajectories begin to soar. So this is the origin story. In 2014, both my business partner and I were at pivotal transition points in our careers. Jenny Galuzzo, my co-founder, was pregnant with her second son. She had spent a career in journalism behind and in front of the camera and got to the point where she couldn't chase fires in the Bronx anymore, being 6 months pregnant. So she had to figure out another way forward. I had moved my family back to New York from the West Coast for the fourth and final time, and I shuttered my consultancy business in the process. I had moved to Seattle as a trailing spouse, giving up my career at Ogilvy and Mather and working the freelance lifestyle because my husband got recruited at Microsoft. And in 1998, Microsoft was not the advertising hotbed that it is today. So we began to talk about life and family and children and career. And once we began to have that conversation, we found that we were having that conversation over and over and over with educated, experienced women who are at the top of their game, who are battling to continue to work. So we decided to do something about it, and we founded The Second Shift. Our mission is simple. We retain critical female talent in the workforce. And how do we do that? We aggregate the very best in the marketing and finance verticals, women who have spent careers building their craft. You know these women. Many of you in this room probably are these women. You know exactly how to do the job and how to get it done. And so by giving these women a choice at a certain period in their life where the traditional full-time workplace was not an option, gave us the ability to disrupt the typical binary of the workplace. You're either working or you're not working, which we all know is not working. If 50% of entry-level jobs are held by women and only 3% of CEOs in Fortune 500 companies are women, there is something terribly broken about the way that we look at the workforce. So we decided that we would create The Second Shift, and actually our timing could not have been better. As we all know, the workforce is changing. Technology has broken down office walls, and people are valuing flexibility that working remotely brings to life and work balance. Right now, 1/3 of the American workforce is already working flexibly. And what is a very interesting fact in all of this to us at the second shift is that in this freelance, gig, remote economy, whatever you want to call it, women routinely out-earn men. So for us, that is very, very interesting. But what does that mean for all of you here in the room as stakeholders in independent agencies? It means that you have access to a carefully selected talent pool representing the most experienced freelance talented available in marketing and finance verticals. Our members go through a highly vetted selection process. Right now we have 1,000 members. That is from over 17,000 applications in the US. At this point, we are not taking members from outside of the US and Canada. So the demand is enormous. There are women who have spent decades doing what they do best. They were brand strategists, they were HR executives, they were in traffic, they worked in account services, they worked at McKinsey, they worked at Bain, they worked at Goldman Sachs. They want to continue to do what they were trained to do, and we are giving them the ability to do that, and we are giving you, the stakeholders, access to acquire this expertise in an on-demand, new and agile format. So this is these are the opportunities that we know are available out there. We know that we solve critical staffing needs in a time when the parental leave is like an arms race, when Facebook and Twitter and Uber and Snapchat and Facebook are giving men and women 6 months parental leave, non-gender binding, and Facebook has now introduced a month of compassionate leave. Who fills in those senior roles? Who comes in and takes up that slack? Our members can. We also give you access to exactly what you need when you need it. And this is something that Helen and I are going to talk a little bit about. You may not always need somebody who has expertise in how Coca-Cola does in China, but you may need them when you're pitching a specific new client. We probably have that client we probably have a member that can help you with that and get you all ready for your big client pitch. And then we also give you the ability to engage with these experts in an on-demand basis. It enables you to grow and contract as your business demands. It enables you to bring these experts in when you need them and then not worry about another full-time hire. So we work with companies, very quickly, I'm just gonna give you it is so easy to use the second shift. I know this sounds like an infomercial, but I promise we're gonna talk about bigger things in a minute. The second shift is a platform. It is a marketplace. As a business, you become an employer partner, you upload your project. If you need somebody tomorrow to help you do a 72-hour turnaround quick data research, or you need somebody to come in 9 months to fill in for a CMO on a project, this is all done through the marketplace. What we did was we took out the back and forth that so many of us are used to when it comes to finding freelance talent. Is he available? Do you know that guy? Do you know a guy? I think I know somebody. She used to work here. She used to do that. What we've done is we've given you the access, immediate access to this extraordinary member talent pool. And we feel like our partners understand and benefit from the unique point of view and critical expertise that our members also bring. We heard Beck's amazing talk about the women's perspective, not with Mission by any means, but with many companies and agencies and brands that we work with, we bring the women into the room so that when your client says, I want your team to look like my team, and you don't have those members in-house, our members can be part of your team so that you are able to fulfill that client's needs. And that it is as easy as pie. For a lot of American business, it's important that we're an approved vendor, so we do that. We take care of all the paperwork. But more importantly, for stakeholders who understand what are your immediate needs, we give you the power to identify and hire immediately somebody who's going to help make your life that much easier. And I hope that's what we're doing with Mission. And I'm going to let Helen take it from here.
Thank you. Thank you, Gina. So hi everyone, my name is Helen Croft. I'm the Global COO of Mission, which is an independent communications and marketing agency based in London. We have an office in New York and an office in San Francisco, and it's great to be here. Thank you, Julian, again for having me, and thank you, Gina, for inviting me. As a global COO, it is slightly ironic, I think, particularly given the session that we are here to be part of, when I take a deep breath and I say that I actually work 4 days a week, or I try to, at the very least. And I think, if anything, this displays how the modern world of work has changed and is changing. The reason why we, as Mission, can make the decisions that we do in relation to the flexibility of our workforce, it's not because we have a female founder, although we do, and it's not because I think we're a bunch of young hipsters, but I'm not. It's because I think we're agile and we're forward-thinking and we are young in spirit. We try and empathize as much as we can with our clients and our staff and our consumers. And if ultimately all those parts come together, then I think we can safely say we won't fail. So just to help you guys understand a little bit about what we do, to give some context as to how we then work with Gina, let me take you through this. Now, obviously, as a COO, I'm not the business development person, so do bear with me as I take you through some of the examples of our work. This is not normally what I present. So as I said, we are an independent and global communications agency, and we have creativity at our heart. We are in culture, and it lives and breathes everything that we do. We have a wonderful selection of clients, and here's an example actually of a piece of work that we did with Belvedere, where we engaged a wonderful 83-year-old South African artist called Esther to redesign the Belvedere bottle. There she is. And over the years, this idea which we created has been incredibly beneficial for the charity Red. All of the profits that are earned from the sale of that Belvedere vodka bottle goes towards Red's fight against AIDS in Africa. So we think big, and this is a particular project that I'm incredibly proud of. For Pirelli, we turned their calendar, frankly, from porn to art, and we made it a statement of intent for the business that wanted to go somewhere. And last year, 12 incredible women of substance were photographed without makeup for Peter Lindbergh, and I think the results speak for themselves. We build our ideas for purpose, which means that we let your ideas be taken forward and shared, and we are perfectly executing the things that we say that we will do. Now, really interestingly, this is a little project that we did in March of this year, and again, it's really focused on supporting women in the workplace. So one of our clients is a company called the Grosvenor Estate, which basically is one of the biggest real estate owners, frankly, on this earth. And one of their areas in London is in the Grosvenor Estate. It's called a street called Mount Street, which has got the most beautiful selection of shops and restaurants. And we took on the challenge for this client, which was this. So a high percentage of consumers on Mount Street in London are women in business, women who work in business and women who are incredibly successful in the work that they do. But London doesn't have a women's first business club. It has many other clubs dedicated to women, but not women in business. So with our client, we built one. And it became a place where women could network and work. And then we hosted 20 talks to help women and people in business inspire and delight. Interestingly, for our client, not only was it a real celebratory moment for it and one that it felt incredibly proud of, but from a consumer perspective, it actually increased footfall in Mount Street 28% during the week of the pop-up itself and 38% in April. Now, interestingly, for us, I think, as an independent agency, we have a significant number of challenges. We are ambitious and we continue to grow, but we are an independent and not part of a network. And that has huge benefits. So not only are we nimble, we have empathy, we can perform at speed, and we have a huge sense of family, which from a cultural perspective is something I'm incredibly proud of. But it also presents challenges. We have a small HR team, we're small in structure, and sometimes we simply cannot get the talent that we need in order to deliver the work that we need to deliver for our clients. We pride ourselves on working with the best talent we can find, and that's how we deliver the best work. Interestingly, I think we populate our business with an eclectic bunch of non-traditional communications staff members. So we have strategists, journalists, lawyers, connectors, geeks as I call them, and go-getters. And we have to be ever creative about the work that we do and the people who we bring in to do that work. 30% of our staff are interns, or were interns, I should say, and organically they've grown up through our agency, which is a sign that we nurture talent and we support whoever we can support in what they want to do. But as the company grows, we need, honestly speaking, more experts, more specialists. And as Gina and I were talking before, sometimes you just need an ex-McKinsey star to help you cut through a roadblock, which brings me on to my relationship with Gina and the second shift. And one that I am incredibly proud, actually, to be able to talk about, because I think it's a hugely innovative and exciting way of running a business. So we try to be as flexible as we can in populating our talent pool, while at the same time trying to maintain our culture and our wonderful and beautiful workforce. And obviously one of the ways in which we try and demonstrate and perform that flexibility is by engaging with businesses such as the second shift. And we allow them to find us the best talent to upskill my agency on a needs basis, on a needs and flexible basis. Finding the right talent can be really fiendish. And we often find ourselves competing against much bigger businesses with much bigger budgets, and sometimes simply we are just priced out of the market. So we have the privilege of working with the second shift, and we've done so in sourcing a number of roles, funnily enough, quite recently. So we've actually recruited one of my new HR support functions in the New York office, strategists, PR specialists, and digital and content experts. And often where I'm really looking for the second shift to help us is when we need people to come in who have specific sector or region experience. And they have often come in on a 72-hour basis or 3-month basis and more recently a 6-month basis. So all have been exceptionally talented and driven candidates. And they themselves have then brought a wealth of knowledge and connections to our business that have then been shared with my more permanent members of staff. From a cultural perspective, we work hard to ensure that all freelancers are welcomed into our culture. And that ambition is something that I personally implemented across the agency. I strive to have all freelancers learn about our business and our vision from day one, from the minute that they enter our doors, because I think if they feel part of our team and feel part of the workforce generally, then they will feel a much greater connection with those that they're working with and what we're trying to achieve for our clients. Ironically, I feel that Gina could have presented our credentials earlier because I think we share so much in common in trying to achieve a new way of working, a new way of looking at the world and its workforce. I think it's fair to say that we're both focused on the future, and we both strive to bring unique voices to the table for our clients to work with. And certainly from my perspective, particularly listening as well to Bex's talk earlier and understanding and learning more about just the stark data that's available to us and the work that really needs to be done to make a difference in this particular area. I'm super proud to continue to work with Gina.
Thanks, Helen.
Thank you for having me, Gina.
That's all. Unless anyone has any questions.
Okay, guys, are you okay to move on? Are you going to be around tonight?
Yeah.
Yes, we both will.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
So come and
Thank you.
chat to you then. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Yes, let's just put it there. Okay, fantastic. Right, it is time now for our last speaker of the day. Hanan is a copywriter by profession. She's worked for some of the best-known creative agencies in London, rising to be a creative director at more than one. And I'll just tell you a little bit of a story. She once told us how she interviewed a young woman for a new job, and the candidate came into her office and looked rather surprised. And she said, why are you looking like that? And she said, well, the young woman said, "Your name's Ali," and it really didn't cross my mind that as a creative director, you might actually be a woman. So Ali is setting to change all of that now, and at the end of this session we're going to ask you all to help change this with her, not because you ought to, but because we hope that you will really want to, and in half an hour's time you will all know how to. So I'll hand over now for the last session of the day to Ali. Ali, you're very welcome.
Thank you so much. So the best till last, right? Thank you so much. At 5 o'clock, and I'm sure you're just all looking forward to a lovely big glass of white wine. So thank you so much for having me, Julian and team, today. So my name is Ali Hanan. I'm the founder of an organisation called Creative Equals. I'm also a creative director, a digital creative director, and I've been in the industry for over 16 years. And I'm going to talk about why I set up Creative Equals in just a moment. But, you know, as Beck has so brilliantly talked about, you know, diversity is a hot topic right now. Everyone's been talking about it. I see very few people actually doing it. But diversity, there is no doubt that it makes us smarter, it makes us more profitable, and it also makes us more innovative, because actually I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. But as Bex was saying, you know, women on boards drive profitability by 16%, and when you add ethnic diversity into that mix, profits go up on boards by over 35%. So there's a lot of great business reasons for really embracing diversity. Also, we're all about the 50-50, so we're all about the balance, because actually balanced teams work the best. They're the most profitable and the most successful. And of course, you know, Bex has already talked about female capital. It's going to, you know, be massively growing over the next couple of decades. And so being on the front foot for that in your businesses as you go into the future is actually future-proofing your businesses. And I'm just going to put another little argument onto the table here as well, because being a digital creative director, one of the big dangers I also see in homogenized teams is actually it's easy to replicate that kind of thinking. And who knows this case study from McCann in Japan last year? Anyone? So what they did here was they actually pitted an artificially intelligent creative director against a human one, and the brief was for Clorets. And this one was the one that came out of the artificially intelligent creative director. It was obviously looking at, did a big deep dive, digging in, looking at trends, looking at data, looking at what people like. You know, surprise, surprise, they came up with a flying dog that was painted green and sparkled and was kind of like, you know, cute and funny, versus the human ad, which was basically a beautiful piece of, beautiful canvas with a woman doing calligraphy and writing her some empowering messages on it. And actually they put these two pieces of creative out to the public, and they asked them to choose which one they liked best. And you know what? The human piece of work beat the artificially intelligent creative director by just 9%. Just 9%. So that goes to show that it is easy, and it can be easy, and it will get easier as machine learning gets smarter and deeper to replicate human thinking. So we have to embrace diversity and start putting more divergent thoughts into our creative teams and into the work in order to stay on top of not just business, but also machines. So my own story, let's click straight into my Google role. So you started telling my story originally. So my own story starts about 3 years ago, when a young creative team came in and they said to me, "Oh, we've been round to so many agencies, and you're the first female creative director that we've met." And of course, I said to them, "How many agencies have you been to?" And they said, well, they counted, and they counted, and they counted, and they counted, and they said, "Well, you know what, we've been to 15 agencies. 15. So when I went back to my desk, I did this Google search. And you can see as the scroll goes down what the world looks like. And actually, in 2008, only 3% of the world's creative directors were female. In London, I think that figure runs at about 12%. But this actually came out of the Canline Data Crunch last year. This shows that across the globe for the last decade, despite a lot of rhetoric about this, a lot of conversations about this, nothing has actually changed. So I think unless we actively go into businesses and really shift this line, it'll keep on being this flat line. And so what the world looks like in the UK is this. Women start out at advertising colleges at 50-50, but pretty much we lose about 40%. Just listen to that number, 40% of our young female talent as they come into industry. And across the board, according to the IPA's figures, just 30% of our creative departments are made up by female staff. And of course that means only 12% get up to creative director roles. And if you've ever sat and played Count the Chief Creative Officers in London, you're pretty much counting on your fingers. So that is the state of the world. So obviously we need to kind of unpack that and find out what happens and how we can really look to shift the story. This actually, and so we did a piece of research with the Young Creative Council to sort of see what actually the world looks like for young women coming in. 88% of them said they lack role models. 60% of them said that they can't stay in the industry with a young family, which is a lot of women that we're going to lose to motherhood. But then I think really what happens, you can really see from this org chart. This is a live org chart, so I see org charts from all over different creative departments in London. But what you can see is young women come in to the departments. What they will see with this state of the world is they will see no way through and up. There are no role models. People have a natural tendency to mentor people like themselves. So one thing I challenge you to all do tomorrow when you go back into your offices, on Friday after tomorrow, is to go and pick someone who's junior, who doesn't look or sound like you, to go and mentor. Because actually mentoring and sponsorship of young people's careers early on is absolutely critical to their success. And this is one of the exercises I get my agencies to do, is to actually colour block out their charts, their org charts, in terms of gender, in terms of flexible working, and then in terms of ethnicity, and also in terms of ethnicity and gender, because actually looking for women of colour within creative departments across London is also, the numbers are so low, we don't actually have any data on it at the moment, but I know from trying to find some speakers for my conference in March how difficult it was to find anyone in senior roles. I have uncovered 3. And of course that puts us in this crazy position where actually just 12% of creative directors make work for our powerful consumer audience. And I think Beck's beautifully portrayed and outlined, what that can mean in terms of financial benefit for businesses and for clients. So really going down and into our teams and really addressing that gender balance is really critical. And of course, clients are turning around and demanding this. Last year, Hewlett-Packard, General Mills and Verizon came out and said that they're not going to employ an agency unless they're 50-50 and equally represented with people of colour. And actually, in the case of Hewlett-Packard, that's because 50% of their products are brought by women, so printers and computers. So of course it makes sense to have women, actually for them, creating the work that their consumers buy. And of course this put the fear of God into lots of companies around the globe that had these clients as they quickly tried to scramble a gender diversity strategy for these clients. And so, to actually look to redress this, I believe gives your company an advantage in the marketplace. It also future-proofs it. It also will enhance your reputation. So, of course, it's no good to be turning up to a pitch anymore with just a lineup that is just one type of human being. You have to show diversity and representation within your teams. And equally, I think it gives all businesses and agencies better and more interesting opportunities, and also saves us from the robots. The exciting thing is actually we have been also working with some of the key intermediaries in town. So our kite marks, so the logo of Creative Equals has become a kite mark, is championed and recognised by the AAR, by the oyster catchers, and by Creative Brief. So if I'm a client and I've got an RFI out for a pitch and I'm looking for a company, an agency that's committed to gender equality, we are that kite mark. So I'd like to also think that having this kite mark gives you a really good business advantage. And actually, we've had some of the biggest agencies in town sign up, a lot of the big holding companies and groups. So we've got the Ogilvy Group, the Engine Group. In terms of independents, we're hoping to get Brave signed up. We work with, I'm just trying to think, I've got about 27 agencies now, so this has been, you know, as we've built up over the year. Oh gosh, who is my independent? Anyway, sorry, I'm just thinking I've got Lucky Generals who are also just about to sign up, but I guess they're not independent anymore because they've sold out to TBWA. Anyway, so this is Creative Equals, and this is the ethos. You'll see it's about everybody coming together to make a change across the industry. And it's also all about the 50-50. So our approach is really inclusive. Whenever we have an event, a lineup, we try and make sure that we're equally split, that I always try and have a 50-50 bunch of speakers. How it works is we go right into the heart of creative agencies, into their teams. We look at the pipeline, we look at how they're hiring, we look at how they're bringing talent all the way through, and more critically, all the way up to the top. In and around that, we look at the C-suite and we unpack any issues in terms of unconscious bias. So we bring unconscious bias training and affinity bias training into the leadership team and to anyone who's on the front line of hiring. I'll talk about in a moment why that's really important. And then in and around that, we've got a charter for the recruitment sector, and I'm really delighted to say that IPG are looking to get all their recruiters on their preferred suppliers list, certified in our charter. And then above and beyond that, we've been working with all the key agency industry award bodies to make sure that they have equal representation on their juries, because juries are so very important. So we've worked with the FEs, with Creative Circle, and with the DMAs this year to get them to 50-50, because having work seen through an equal lens is really, really just so important. And as part of our program, when we go and work with agencies, we can curate and bring apprentices into your businesses. There's obviously the apprentice levy that many businesses have to pay. So if you're looking for young, amazing, non-grad talent, we have a whole pool of talent. You can be really specific with your needs for that talent. If you want videographers, content creators, et cetera, we can curate them just for your business needs. We've also set up the Creative Equals Intern Bursary. So last year, actually a little sad story, a terrible story actually. The MD of Major Players died, and her friends and family in her honour launched a fund for her, and they gave it to Creative Equals, and we were really delighted to be able to give it away to a woman from a low socioeconomic background. What we saw with the fund was actually we had 16 applicants for it, and we couldn't fund all of them. We could only fund one woman, so it's a paid placement in an agency. If any of you would like to fund or offer one, it's for $5K is all we're looking for. But we believe that actually providing young female talent with funding really helps them through that placement phase, because you can see it's pretty tough. London's a very difficult place, you know, rents are sky high, but equally a lot of young women come from low socioeconomic backgrounds and really lack that social mobility, and coupled with the fact they come into a lot of creative departments where they may not feel, with org charts like the org charts that you saw before, I believe we can really stop losing a lot of talent with funding. We've also set up a returnship scheme. This is Sarah, our first returner. So the other big thing that happens is women may come back after one child. They might come back for a couple of years, but we find that we lose them, particularly after their second or third child. So just when a woman goes up to those CD roles, often motherhood comes along. And because of the lack of flexible working within businesses and the way that there's a lot of presenteeism still demanded by agencies, which is super outdated, super antiquated, we lose a lot of our mothers. In fact, mothers, I would like to be seen as their own diversity group, because we really have so few within our businesses. Anyway, Sarah's story that she came back on a returnship scheme. She came back to work with Dave Bonaguidi, Chief Creative Officer of Crispin, Porter & Bogosky, for 8 weeks. They got on fabulously. She stayed there for 5 months, but there was no job there at the end of it, so she's now gone off to AKQA, where she's working as a senior copywriter. So I got a great email from her the other day just saying how brilliant it was and how she was just so glad to be back in the workplace. Now, I put that story into campaign last year, and I have about 20 amazing women who would like to come back. They write me notes like, I just want to work a 4-day week and leave work at 5 o'clock. So, you know, they're not asking for much, just a little bit of flexibility, but ideally some of them want, you know, 2 or 3 day weeks. So if you'd like to get in touch, like I say, I've got lots of women who want to come back. One of the key things I believe will really make a difference is doubling the number of female creative leaders. So we have set up a school. It's the Future Leaders School. We've got one running from June to December. We're going to be running another session just for 25 women from October to March. So if we can take that 12%, if we can make that 24% over the next couple of years, then we will really start to shift this number. So that's one of our key missions and metrics. We've set up Creative Equal Certified for the recruitment sector, because actually the way that the agency world gets fed is through a number of different recruiters, and the recruitment market, getting them to really own the diversity story is really important. Has any of you heard of the Heidi Howard study? No. Okay, so the Heidi Howard study is a study that was done where a woman had written up, where basically a group of people were shown a write-up of a leader. And all that happened was they swapped Heidi for Howard on that write-up of a leader. He was seen to be an enigmatic, amazing leader who you'd really want to follow. She was seen to be possibly a bit selfish, maybe a little bit difficult, perhaps, a bit of a bitch actually. And maybe, you might not particularly want to work for her because she'd be quite difficult. So just by simply swapping out a name on a leadership description, you automatically get bias. Equally, there was a study that was just done recently that showed that if you put Alex instead of Muhammad on a CV, Muhammad was 3 times less likely to get offered a job interview. So there's a lot of bias that goes on in terms of CVs and in terms of even job descriptions. So I'm sure you've all seen that description out on LinkedIn. We want a rock star CD to lead the team to glory. Or, written in this kind of like football language, et cetera, et cetera. Most women look at those kind of job adverts and go, this isn't for me. So we get all our recruiters and all our agencies to write gender-neutral job ads to make sure they have, gender-neutral language and imagery. Also, the other big thing we talk to them about is hiring women based on their potential. Right now, there are so few women who are making it up to that top set. We have to start hiring in a different way because everyone's kind of chasing this tiny little pool of fish. And so basically we talk about hiring from the one rung below, bringing in women based on their potential to do a job, and then giving them on-the-job training to get into that role. Because at the moment we're in this situation, like I say, where there's just the same people, chasing the same talent. So it's about cross-skilling, going out to different parts of the market, but also thinking about new ways and new approaches to hiring. And back to the point before, it's also, if wherever possible, it's about doing blind CVs. That makes a huge difference. And also, in terms of mums, one thing we hear from our mums is they will call up a recruiter who might be their front line of actually getting back to the workplace and say things like, I want a flexible working, I just like to work 4 days a week. And we will hear from our mums that the recruiters won't ever return their call. They'll just put the phone down. They'll never hear back. So we also get the recruiters to really own and champion the returning mothers sector. And this is just a great example of unconscious bias. So who remembers who saw this a couple of months ago? Yeah, with this guy, he was doing an interview. He was based in the Philippines. He was talking about North Korea. And into the room, told his 2 kids. And, a great example of unconscious bias is, how many people actually took the Filipino woman who came in here for his nanny. and she was actually his wife. These were their kids. So, it just goes to show how much, unconscious bias goes on within our daily lives, within the way that we look at work. Actually, by the way, I'm just going to point out one thing about this slide that's kind of quite amusing as well, is she was obviously doing really well, this mum, right? She probably had the kids in the kitchen, feeding them whatever. They toddled off, toddled in. She obviously went to the loo, went off to the toilet. If you can see, her pants are slightly down in this picture. And so as she probably just had that little moment, she thought, I just really need to go to the toilet. They went to the toilet and these kids toddled in and just totally gate crashed this interview. Anyway, my point is unconscious bias goes on all the time. So one thing we also train all our agencies, all our recruiters in, is how they understand and see the world, because we all have our fast thinking and our slow thinking. Our fast thinking is all the judgments we quickly make on the fly. But if we can take a little moment more, if we can look at a CV a little bit deeper, if we can rethink the way that we look at the world, we can really overcome and start to begin to challenge ourselves to really hire differently. So we've got major players to sign up to it. We've got about 4 different recruiters in London, but like I said, I'm hoping all 35 to sign up about 35 over the next couple of months. And then, so how we work with the agencies that we work with is we come in and we go and we have a 3-step process. So we first assess them, we look at where they're at and what shape their team's in. We benchmark them and we evaluate them. We look at all sorts of things like your maternal retention rates. We look at your equity, not only in terms of representation, but in terms of pay, because there is unfortunately also still a really big pay gap in the sector as well, about 18%. And I see it all the time as we go in, this pay gap, which is another thing we get the recruiters to own, because actually a lot of them do the negotiating on behalf of their candidates as well. And then off the back of that, we'll develop a roadmap, we'll develop a plan on how we can really achieve a diverse and in terms of gender and also in terms of ethnicity workforce for companies. And some of that might be quite simple things. So back in the world of that org chart that you saw beforehand, the team that was sort of in the middle of that org chart were literally sitting on the side of the creative shop floor. So just by moving them into the center of the creative shop floor, by giving them some mentors, by giving them some coaching, they suddenly felt like they were part of the culture. Because it's not just about putting in the numbers and going, yes, I've ticked that box. It's actually also about creating inclusive work cultures. It's really key. So we'll work with the team to develop a roadmap, and then off the back of that, we will continually go in and assess. We can bring in talent. We can bring in training, unconscious bias training, et cetera, and really look to give companies a plan on how to shape up and how to commit to going 50-50 over the coming years. So, we're all about small, actionable steps. And if you think of this whole story, it's like a marble jar. It's not that you can just sort of brush over with one particular stroke. It's like 101 little actions that can take place within workplaces and, within the way that we behave and think every day. And Bex had the continuum before for, I guess, what it looks like in terms of the consumer side of things, but, also in terms of your own teams and your own staff. What we see is, lots of companies are at the stage where they haven't really even had to think about it or thought about it that much, but now because of clients, because of a moral imperative, because of great business reasons, suddenly they are. Otherwise, they might be compliant. They might be just ticking a few boxes. Yes, we've done our gender pay audit. Yes, we've got great shared maternity and paternity policies, so they might be compliant. Or maybe they've got a few programs in place to really look at, moving women up within their organisations. But ideally, all companies would be moving over to this end of the spectrum, which is integrated and inclusive work cultures. So where women really feel part and have their voices heard and are, right at the heart of the DNA of the companies and agencies that you operate and service. So, nearly there. That's it. I've finished, actually. So thank you so much. I bet you're really excited. There's a wine probably waiting you just around the corner, and we'll look forward to seeing you all at dinner tonight. I guess my question to you all is, who would like to, I'm looking to franchise this and to take this around the globe. You know, it's going super successfully in London, but I would like to roll it out to other markets. My question to you all in this room today is, do you know anyone in your market who would like to pick this up and run with it? So if you have someone that you can think of or think it's a really interesting model that you'd like to take to other places in the world, I'd love to have a chat with you this evening. Okay, thanks so much.